Good morning and welcome to the Adult Education and Workforce Development Statewide webinar for June 8th, 2022. I am Jerry Hafner and joining me is the Adult Education team and some special guests. Let's begin this morning and let's meet Gina. Gina was an ELL student at Warren Township Adult Education on the east side of Indianapolis, and her story goes like this. My name is Gina. Due to my country's political instability in March of 2020, I decided to immigrate to the US of A. I chose to settle in Indianapolis where I thought I could find guidance and support to move and support me could find guidance and support to move me forward with my life. I was concerned about improving my English because I knew it would be very difficult for me to interact with others. As soon as I moved to Indiana in June of 2020, the major concern was finding a job to meet my needs. It was a really difficult time for me, especially since I didn't have a recognized trade. I didn't have a car, and I made arrangements with my friends every day to drop me off at school. It was sometimes difficult and embarrassing for me. When I began class at Warren Township Adult Education, I could already feel the staff's desire to help me improve my English, and that changed my life. I will never forget my first weeks of class with my teacher because fractions scared me, but she did everything to make me understand. They allowed me to succeed. The positive energy has provided me the motivation to hold on despite the painful and difficult circumstances that I experienced. I dreamt of success. I did indeed succeed. My first goal was to earn my high school diploma. Then I decided to join the CNA class. The CNA classes were the greatest educational experience of my whole life. The course structure had an appropriate approach and methodology for me to learn. Currently, I'm happy to be a certified nursing assistant. I've been working at Rosewood Village since obtaining my CNA certificate. The language barrier, the language barrier that I thought could cause me problems is not a problem, and I am positive every time I walk through the front door of my workplace. Being in the medical field is a calling for me. Sometimes it's more amazing than frustrating. The Rose Walk residents like how I treat them. Some of the employees and residents call me Sunshine. I make a difference in how I talk to and take care of people. I feel all the doors are open to me that would have been closed if I hadn't gone to Warren Adult Education. I see life smiling at me, and I feel on my way to a new phase. Congratulations, Gina. We're all very proud of you. And staying at Warren Township, I'd like to mention and give recognition to Shonda Hamilton. She is their IET and career manager, and she was recently recognized as the district-wide secondary support staff of the year there at Warren Township Schools. Shonda grew up on the east side of Indianapolis and graduated from Warren Central High School. She still lives in Warren Township, and both of her children attend Warren Central. Pictured with her superintendent, she said, I am truly blessed to be part of this wonderful township and to work alongside my director, Natalie Reuter, as well as some of the absolute best co-workers. Congratulations, Shonda. Let's turn to something that you've all been waiting for, your program allocations for program year 2022. These will come out in a few days. For the basic grant, our team looked at five different scenarios before deciding on a formula, and allow me to explain what we did and how we arrived at the formula that we used. The first scenario looked at total dollars allocated by performance, 100% devoted to performance. And given the ramifications that we saw with this formula, especially as many programs were just coming out of COVID, we then decided to look at a base and a percentage based on performance. And if you recall, your initial program year 2021 funds were distributed utilizing an 85% base and remaining dollars appropriated or allocated by performance. In the end, looking at the entire state and how the performance would affect programs with their upcoming allocations for program year 2022. In the end, we chose a more conservative route for program year 2022. And that more conservative route is there at the bottom of your screen. We used an 80% base of what you had previously received, and then we distributed the remaining 20% according to performance. You also need to know that there was an increase in total dollars available for program year 2022. This was due to a very slight increase in federal dollars and carryover money. That carryover money was federal carryover money. In addition to the 80% base, programs will receive dollars for the basic ABE grant based upon 4 outcomes: enrollments, measurable skill gains, HSEs reported on NRS Table 4, Column F, and IET WEI measurable skill gains. We use the raw number and not the percentages. This data was polled on May 20th for program year 2022, and this was the same metrics that we used to determine the program year 2021 grant. So we used enrollments, measurable skill gains, HSCs, and IETs, WEI measurable skill gains to determine that 20% for your ABE grant. Moving on, IET, WEI allocations. These were based solely on performance. The metrics that we used, as you can see on your screen, were IET completions, IET certifications, and WEI, the numbers enrolled. So completions, certifications for IET, and the WEI enrolled. And finally, for those programs that receive an IELCE grant, these allocations, we just looked at enrollments for program year, and we went through July 1st of 2021 through May 20th of this year. There was a separate appropriation to the 2 Indiana online only programs, VU and Monroe County Schools Broadview Learning Center, and the Department of Correction will receive a set amount as well. So those are the ways that we determine the allocations. As I said, Donna is working on those letters to get those out to you in the next few days. I have provided in some of our regional meetings some glimpses of what individual programs may receive for this coming year. I will tell you this, some of the figures that I provided, especially early on, will be altered just a bit because we had to do some recalculations as late as yesterday to ensure that we had all the moving parts and everything was correct. So what Donna will send to you in the letter will be the official amount based upon the formulas that I have given you for each of the categories. So let's spend a few minutes going over our state data so far, and I think we're going to end up program year 2021 with a very good year. Enrollment is up by 2,202 students, almost 2,200 students. This is a 13% increase when compared to the same time a year ago. And as I've mentioned in previous webinars and in our regional meetings, obviously The return of ELL students to our programs after the pandemic have played a big part in that enrollment increase. So good job there. Measurable skill gains are just about even from where we were the same time a year ago. And as we've been mentioning on our statewide webinars, our HSCs are down. The difference currently is 651 diplomas, or a 17% decrease. As we finish the program year, as I mentioned last month, please get your students ready for post-test and get them finished up, as I know you're doing for the HSCs, to ensure that we finish the program year strong. I'm very happy to announce that the Youth Initiatives team has a new intern, and you see her on the screen there. She is subbing this morning for Bart, and I'd like to welcome Colleen Harless. She is a student at George Washington University. So good morning and welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Like Jerry said, I'm Colleen Harless. I just finished my sophomore year at George Washington, and I started on the youth team as Youth Initiatives intern on May 23rd. So I'm just going to give a few updates from our team for BART. First off, there are about 5 DWD interns this summer, and 4 of us have already started. So BART has planned some opportunities for professional development, which you can see on the slide here. If you have any questions about any of these activities, please reach out to BART if you're interested in joining, or any questions in general. And then on the next slide, I can give some JAG Indiana updates. First off, several Indiana students went to Fort Worth, Texas to compete in our National Career Development Conference in May. And our JAG family represented very well, as you can see by the winners listed on the slide. So we want to extend our congratulations to them. And then lastly, we're coming up on JAG summer training and awards, which you can see the dates of June 29th and then July 11th through 15th. And so if you're interested in attending the awards section for JAG state training, please let a JAG team member know. They will be held June 29th at the Indiana Government Center South. So thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, and great job, and welcome to DWD. Up next is Denise. Denise is back, and she's going to share some more information about the HiSET test, and specifically this morning about the reading test to help our teachers and our programs statewide improve the reading scores. Hello, Denise.
Hi, Jerry. Good morning, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me again. I love to have the opportunity to share, and hope that we can give some information from our program that others can use to help improve those reading scores and HiSET as a whole. So next slide, please. I guess I'll start with kind of a background of where we are with reading in our program. When I first started here, it was talked about how language and math are those gains that we focus on first. They are easier gains, you can get them quicker. But then I looked at our students who were preparing to take, at that time, the task exam, and then became HiSET, and we just weren't really focusing enough on reading. And so I proposed with my team, after I talked with them, is what if we had just a reading focused class? Because regardless of whether you get your gain in language or math, you still need to get that reading score up to what we call our boot camp, our fast track program ready. So this is where you'll see, as I go through this, where this classroom structure came about for our program, and then the materials that we have found and other materials to share online that you'll be able to use. Next slide, please. So in our program now, we now have specific reading focused classes. And again, I know that some programs combine all their classes. We do have the luxury of being able to separate math, language, and reading. So our first attempt at making a reading only focused class was to have those who come in at a TABE level of an E to M3. So we offer those classes in the morning and in the evening. And that target instruction that's given in that class is based on the TABE M level. And you can see that the materials we use that we have found to be the most beneficial to help our students get those reading gains. So it's the TABE Tutor. If you haven't seen this before, I saw this at COABE. TABE Tutor does have some extra practice workbook only. That is the second material that I have provided. And then that score boost for TABE, we think those are really excellent for reading, a lot of reading passages in there. And then once students get to that level where they finally earn that M3 gain, we then have this reading M3 class again offered both in the morning and the evenings. That instruction right there is targeted at the TABE D level to help with those higher order questions. Also, we have found too, one of the most difficult skills for our students is not that they cannot read and comprehend, it's that translating, especially with our students that are ELL. They come from our ELL program, they focus on their language skills some more and get those gains in our language classes, but reading, it's not that they're unable to comprehend, it's just be able to read fast enough. And as you know, and you probably have heard the same from your students, a lot of our ELL students run out of time on the HiSET exam. So we want to, in this class level, talk not only about comprehension and the skills needed, but how we can help with fluency and then just the best test strategies so that we can finish that test in time. Again, those are the materials we use. They're all at the level D, and then there is that additional workbook from TABE Tutor that has practice exercises only. Next slide, please. So once we get through our TABE levels, we have a class that actually evolved this year, and I believe it'll do the same thing when we start the new school year. So that class that starts as that M3 plus, actually about fall break, once students start taking the HiSET, evolves into more of a reading HiSET prep class / remediation class. Those students that may not have passed reading the first time, we work on that targeted instruction, and everything in that class from fall break on is HiSET levels instruction. So we do make sure that all our students are enrolled in HiSET Academy. And I'm sorry, I did miss that. Our students in the other reading classes are enrolled in Essential Ed Academy with TABE Academy at the levels M and D. Once they are ready for HiSET, we move them into HiSET Academy. What I really like about this, as do our teachers and students, there are 4 practice tests available, which are just part of the academy, so they are free. We assign those tests and actually have the students take that in a simulated testing environment. And I think that helps with test anxiety, especially if someone's retaking the test. There is kind of that level of anxiety, and they come back and I didn't get it done, I ran out of time. So we try to just simulate that to give them more at ease when they're taking the test. We do have the luxury of being a testing site too, so when the students are able to take those practice tests in the simulated testing environment, they're in the same room that they would take the HiSET exam. Also in this area, we focus on vocabulary instruction. We find that vocabulary is essential, as I'm sure all of you have seen. If you don't have that background prior knowledge, some of those articles that they may be reading on the exam, as well as what you see in practice materials, if you don't have that background knowledge, they can read it as fluently as possible and be able to read every word, but missing that part. So we're trying to increase vocabulary. One of the other strategies to help with time that we like to teach is the skimming strategy. I have an excellent instructor who works on this, showing them, and she actually times them and says you have this amount of minutes to skim the article, and then they discuss questions, and then the students find out that even from skimming, they are getting some of those answers, being able to answer some of those maybe not quite high order questions, but the easier comprehension questions just through the skimming strategy. And these are our materials that we use in the reading HiSET class. I've shown these before. We love that blue book, Language Arts. It's from New Readers Press. It does have some writing there, but it's the core of that is reading. There's a great reading practice questions and lessons in the official guide. The test, free practice test 6 is what we use to also help students understand what the questions are going to look like on the test. And then Score Boost has that thinking skills, which does also help with science and social studies, but great with reading. So those are the materials that our students use when they're in that HiSET prep remediation class. Next slide, please. And I believe I've shown this before, but I wanted it again. These are the areas from looking at feedback from students, looking at when we see our test scores, data, what's missing. These are the areas we want to make sure we cover in content in the classroom. So you can see the fiction, point of view, character, plot, and I won't read all of them, mood, but so on, but there is the vocabulary there. Poetry, we have all heard from feedback, there's some sort of poetry on that high set exam. So just making sure students understand the figurative language and how to understand the theme. And then of course, nonfiction is where we spend most of our time, as that is 60% of the high set exam. I do like my teachers will pick different articles that are nonfiction, that are current events, as well as bringing in any other kind of themes that they can nonfiction wise to also integrate social studies and science. Next slide, please. Oh, all right, and this is our reading boot camp. So as you know, we have that fast track boot camp program that we offer to our students, and we have 3-day and 4-day options. So you do have the high flyers that'll come in, get those high scores, and immediately go into boot camp. They don't need that reading structure that we just went over, but then we have the students who are not quite ready for the high set exam, go through our reading classes, and then they're ready for it. So when we look at our reading boot camp, we have 2 different ways that it's presented. So depending on student schedule, or sometimes what we encourage is if reading's a struggle, we tend to encourage the 3-day boot camp, because with our 3-day boot camp, reading instruction occurs on day 1. It's 2 hours of intense instruction on reading only, and then the students go ahead and take the reading high set exam in our labs with our testing center. So that works, I think, especially with students who need more time and with comprehension. If we do have a student that may need to retake reading, we do also encourage them to try this 3-day boot camp, because it's reading only on Thursday. When you have our 4-day boot camps, reading instruction actually happens on day 2. You only get 90 minutes in instruction, and because of time and as we know the different tests, we actually combine reading and social studies together on day 2. So this could be a little bit better for a high flyer who has those comprehension and fluency skills already when they come in. But at that time, students get 90 minutes of instruction for both reading and social studies, and then they immediately go into the lab. They'll take the reading high set exam immediately followed by the social studies. So that's how our boot camp works for reading. Next slide, please. And then this is so prior, those were the content that we cover in our reading classes. This is the content that we cover in our boot camp fast track instruction. One of the first things we talk about students, which again is in the classes, but a reminder, test taking strategies for reading. I've seen my teachers talk about look at the question first, get that knowledge going. What are you actually reading about? Again, reading vocabulary, it's a short time, but any vocabulary that we can add to our students' background knowledge is what we try to get into in that short amount of time before they take the test. Also, review of literary terms. We find important world events to remember, and I think that helps a lot with our students that have not been in the American school system, getting all of those USA events, but a lot of our world history. So we just try to talk on it. This helps, again, add that prior knowledge and vocabulary depending on what nonfiction passages may be on the high set exam. We always talk about types of figurative language and understanding poetry. Main idea is important. Understanding meaning and context. Again, it goes back to a lot of our students can read the words, but they may not know what it means. So really focusing on, well, what does the rest of the sentence say, and can you find the meaning of that unknown word? Central idea and supporting information is important, as well as fact and opinion and speculation. And then they usually finish up instruction talking about theme. So those are all the topics that are covered in either that 2-hour period on day 1 or in that 90-minute period on day 2 for our fast track program. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to share some resources, and to be completely honest, this is a brand new resource I found that I will be sharing with our reading teachers. I'm very excited about it. And to access it, you need a library card. So I know a lot of our life coaches, if students don't have library cards, we help them get that here around in the area. I just use my library card, and I'm actually from Avon, and my library card worked. And so I believe any number will work. But in this, what I liked is the front picture. You can see there's a reading course with some, like an online course talking about the reading exam. And there's actually 2 free high set practice reading exams. So I've looked into a little bit. I think it's going to be a great resource, and it's something that I'd like to share with my reading teachers in our new professional development, but I wanted to share as well. So that site right there, and again, having a library card, you can access that free resource. Next slide, please. Here are some other resources that we use. Readtheory.org. Our students love this. I actually listen to A student the other day who chose to do read theory, and we have a digital literacy hour part of our classes. Some students are on essential ed, but read theory is used in our reading classes. And the student was, this article is amazing. It's just so interesting, and I learned something new. So it's nice to hear that student feedback. So this is one of the favorite sites that students like to use, and it helps with comprehension and fluency. Again, it's free. Vocabulary.com, one that we have looked at and are just starting to implement. This was given to me by a group in Missouri who came to visit us a couple weeks ago, another adult ed program, but they use this vocabulary.com. There are pre-made lists, but students can also make their own list. So if they come across a word in a passage, I don't know what that means, then they can go into their computers that we have, go into vocabulary.com, add that to their list. So again, just to help increase the amount of vocabulary they have before they take that HiSET exam. And then in the bottom, and I believe I've shared this before, but I wanted to again, we have, one of my teachers has created Quizlet cards for social studies science as well as reading vocabulary. There's an example of the alliteration. And not only did she create the definition on the back, but each one has an illustration. If you go into Quizlet and just search for WTAE, you should be able to find those in there. Boot camp may also work too, but you can use those Quizlet cards. And again, there's 5 sets of social studies and science as well as the 3 sets of reading. So please feel free to use those if you find that they work for your students. Next slide, please. And finally, and I know I say this a lot, but I do have to give a shout out to my teachers. I do give them a lot of different resources and curriculum and research and talking with other programs, but when all is said and done, it's giving that information to my teachers. They dive into it deeper than I could ever hope for, find what's right, find the way to connect to the students, and keep getting our students engaged and coming back. So I just want to tell you that most of our results are due to our fine teachers. And if you have any questions, I'll stick around, but you're more than welcome to email me directly. And I think that's it for today. So Jerry, thank you again for asking me to be here.
And thank you for agreeing. Again, as always, wonderful information. We appreciate your support and your willingness to share all your information throughout the state of Indiana. Thank you, Denise. Well, Donna is here this morning to tell us about the money. Donna?
Well, hello, everyone. Let's get to our fiscal updates. You can see on the screen there some reminder dates. Next Wednesday at 10 a.m. I will be doing a closeout training webinar with all of you. If you did not reply or didn't get the invitation, let me know today so I can get that to you. And also remind you that you can do budget revisions through the end of June. That's when you only need to move money between line items within program or within admin. And then also your closeouts are due Monday, August 15th. That's the last day for closeouts and any reimbursements you have for this year. Okay, let's go to HSE fee reimbursement. We are up from last month's percentage of 47%, and we need a strong finish. That 58% is looking better, but let's keep it going. Speaking of HSE, I've got big news for you. One of the things that everyone told me about is that there's a lag time in getting your invoice from the testing service so that you can reimburse for the HSE fee reimbursement. Starting July 1st, you will be allowed to reimburse for those test fees immediately. You'll do everything the same way that you have. You'll have an HSE backup form with the student names, dates, number of tests on it. You'll include that with your ABE reimbursement. The only difference is this year you can do it right away after they've tested, and then you'll see your money a little bit faster, and we'll also be able to track things in closer to real time than what we've had this year. You will need to have your final invoice from the testing service before you submit your last reimbursement and close out at the end of the program year. So plan accordingly. In our state spending, reimbursing rather, last month we were at 66% of state funds had been reimbursed, and this month we are at 79%. And I do know that there are several programs that have not reimbursed for their May and June expenses, and a few of them that haven't done their April expenses. So I expect to see a really good finish to spending in the state fund category, especially. And overall, with everything included, you're at 65.8% in reimbursing. All right, nothing like seeing time is running out to get the blood pressure going and the heart beating faster. But if you plan to order anything before the end of the program year, today is day 342 of that program year. So you'll need to contact me first to make sure that it will be approved. We're going to be looking at, is there a justification for ordering something this late in the year? And if it is justified, when you can expect the delivery. We will work with you to make sure that you get everything that you need to finish the year strong and start the year with all of your supplies in hand. But we just need to make sure that we aren't abusing the opportunity to order this late in the year. And so that is it for me. And I look forward to seeing all my fiscal people next week on the closeout training.
Well, thank you very much, Donna. Laura is up next, and she's got a lot of information and a lot of good information about enrollment and some trends that she's been able to put together. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. We're going to talk a little bit about demographics. And I've spent a lot of time in inters, and we actually have a new report that we're going to share with you at the end of this presentation. But let's start off with, why do demographics matter? And we've been spending some time, especially in regional meetings, talking about understanding your community and understanding your community need and how that is critical in meeting your community need. We also want to make sure that we're ensuring access and equity in our programs. That is central to being able to offer strong foundational adult education services and classes. And beyond that, demographic trends are going to impact your program services and outcomes, and we'll get into that, especially with some shifts we're seeing in age ranges and age participation in different areas. So that's why we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking through this today. We're going to start off with race and ethnicity, and if any of you are in a school district or in part of an urban area, you will understand that this is a really important topic. And Marilyn Pizzullo actually asked me and said, you know, how do we stack up? How does adult education do as far as serving diverse communities? So we started with a baseline of what Indiana looks like demographically in race and ethnicity, and we pulled this information from the American Community Survey, which is based on census data. And at its most basic analysis point, we see that Indiana is not overly diverse. 78% of our population as a state is white, and 22% almost is non-white. And so when we start to look at how that breaks out in adult education demographics, we can see pre-pandemic, which is AE 2018-19, when we pull that data, 45% of our population was white and 55% non-white. And then when we jump to this current year, that data was pulled on May 16th, we have gotten more diverse. And as Jerry mentioned, we have seen an increase in our ELL population. So that's part of, I'm sure, the increased diversity. But we are seeing 39% white across the entire state and 61% non-white. So we're becoming more diverse as a population of learners. When we break that down a little bit deeper, and we did this on table 2 of inters, and I'll get to that how you can access that table if you're not familiar with it in just a moment. But when we dig a little bit deeper, we can see, breaking out by different races and ethnicities, how we stack up. So we can see, once again, from 2018 to 19, not a significant change, but the biggest difference is an increase in Hispanic and Latino student learners over that time from 18-19 when we jumped to 21-22. And once again, that's not surprising, knowing that we are increasing our ELL population. So there's a little bit of probably vagueness or confusion in the 2 or more races, and we know that that can encompass a lot of different things. And you know, having been at the program level, sometimes when you aren't sure where a race fits, you may put it there just because it can be kind of a catch-all. So I think that's why we have such a significantly larger population than what we're seeing at the state level. The state shows 2%, and we are 19 and 15%, 20 and 15% correspondingly. So that's how we break out at the different levels of demographics. Let's jump to the next slide. But what we were able to do this time that's different, that we haven't been able to do in the past, is we've been able to analyze this demographic data by gains and outcomes. So I've got a pie chart here that's showing how our gain rate, and this is all types of gains. So anyone who earned their HSE, had an EFL gain, or had an IET gain would be covered in the second chart to the right. And what's really amazing about this is, while we see, if you're in the K through 12 world, you hear about the achievement gap a lot. And if your school district hasn't asked you how your students perform in relation to an achievement gap, they may at some point. And this is just a real quick way to show you how to find this data at the adult education level through INTERS. So what we find is about 39% of our student population in 21-22 is white, and white students make up 42% of the gains. So there's a slight increase there, but when you look at a K through 12 achievement gap, that is generally between 15 and 25%. When you go down to the next breakout with Black students, you're seeing they make up 23% of our student population, and they make up 22% of the gains. Our 2 or more races make up 15% in both pie charts. Hispanic, 15, then to 14, and Asian is 5. This is really incredible. Hit the next arrow right there. So basically what we see in adult education across all gains is there is no evidence of an achievement gap. And when I was first asked to run this data, I was a little bit nervous because I wasn't sure what we were going to find. Once again, this is a whole new report. You know, the achievement gap is present across all different education levels. And obviously we have a little bit of a different socioeconomic status in our student population. But even when SES, student economics status, is controlled, you still see an achievement gap in different levels of education. So to me, this is really a point of pride, and really congratulations to all of our programs throughout the state on being able to serve students effectively, no matter who they are, when they come into our program. So I would be really proud of this if you were if you're out in the field. It really makes us proud at the state level to be able to share this information. And this is something that we will be sharing beyond this meeting with some other stakeholder groups. Now, if we jump to the next slide, we broke this out in Region 5. Region 5 is the central Indiana area, and obviously this is our largest region in the state, and it has the biggest population base, but it is also a little more diverse than other parts of the state. So we want to make sure, hey, are we doing a good job in a more diverse urban area? And what we find, if when you go all the way to the right, is who we're serving is much more diverse than the average population. So once again, we are getting at those populations who are most in need, and we're doing a really good job with it. When we go to the next slide and compare our Region 5 enrollment to our Region 5 gains, once again, it holds true just like the state. So there's not a difference in a region that's very urban compared to our state as a whole. So great job across the board in Region 5 and throughout the state. Now, having said this, of course, there may be differences between HSE attainment, IET attainment. This is a very broad stroke. This is a 30,000 foot level view that we're seeing right here, and it's a great place to start, but it doesn't mean that you won't be seeing differences as you get into different gain rates at program levels. I'm just saying, as we start this conversation, it's looking very good, and I'm sure there's ways we can improve, so I don't want us to think, oh, there's no work to do here. But starting out, I think we're starting in a very good place. So if you want to find this information, how do you get there? It's in INTERS, and this is a new function that Steve Sherb added a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. So you would go into INTERS NRS reports, table 2, and you go all the way to the bottom where the arrow on the right is pointing, and you can see gain type. That is new. So you can do all gains, HSE, EFL, IET, and that function is available not just on table 2, but also on table 1 and 3. So all the demographic tables that we have, we now have this function. And I would really encourage you, let's go to the next slide, to be able to look at your individual program demographic makeup as an exercise to make sure that the equity and access points are holding up within your individual programs. Now, HSE is a little bit tricky to be able to do this type of analysis because we do have so much crossover between different races and ethnicities versus ELL versus ABE, and we haven't figured out how to kind of parse that down all the way where we could have a good analysis at the inters level. But from a program standpoint, you can definitely start to look at that information based on who is registering, your pass rates by different ethnic groups. You know, there's a lot of different ways to kind of take it to the next level to program space. But here at the state level and inters, like I said, we have some broad ways for you to start to analyze this information. This is important when you're messaging to your partner organizations and your funders to make sure that you can communicate that you are serving the most in need and you are doing it effectively. Like I said, not having an achievement gap is significant. And it's something, like I said, we're going to be looking at closer at the state level. If you have any questions on how to run these reports, please let me know. And remember, ensuring equity and access is key to serving the vulnerable populations that we work with every day. Next slide. Now I have a couple more data points and I'm going to run through pretty quick, but we've been looking at AE enrollment as well, so total enrollment by age. This demographic analysis is showing how our age breaks out, and we have pretty broad categories. I mean, 16 to 18 is very tight, 19 to 24 is a 5-year range, and then you go 25 to 44, which is practically 20 years. And of course, if you put that many years together in a group, you're going to have a significant number of students. And then 45 plus, we condense the last two just because we see a very small number of students in that 60 plus age range. So we condensed it down to 45 plus from an analysis standpoint. When you look at this, you can see a very small shift, because I know a lot of people are feeling like we're getting more 16 to 18-year-olds in our program, but that's holding fairly steady. We are going to be digging a little bit deeper into that information. Next slide. This shows it by program year, how that breaks out a little bit differently. But like I said, we're going to be digging a little bit deeper and looking at individual age numbers, so we could parse out who is enrolled by 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And we'll be bringing you that information in the coming months as we get a little bit deeper into that age analysis. Let's go to the next. Oh, sorry, back up right there. That jumps to HSE graduates. So the last slide was total breakout by age demographics. Now we're looking at that gain rate for HSE graduates. So HSE graduates by age range from PY program year 18-19 all the way through this year, which is 21-22. And you can see we start to see a pretty significant shift in 16 to 18-year-old graduates of HSE. So while our total number of enrollments haven't changed that much, go to the next slide, please, Donna. You can see if we look at just 16 to 18-year-old across those different years, which is now the first column, we went from 28% of our HSE graduates in that 16 to 18 category. Now we're at 34%. Now, once again, this is graduates. This is a gain rate. We're not really sure if that is more students of that age range signing up to take the test or more students passing. That is something we're going to be working with Megan on getting data from HiSET and trying to get a better understanding of exactly what the dynamic is. But looking at it from a big picture level, we are seeing more graduates in that age range. Let's jump to the next one. So once again, we just do a little comparison chart here. Here's our enrollment by age in program year just this year, 21-22. HSE grads by age. You can see that big difference, that there are 15% of our students enrolled in AE that are 16 to 18, but of our HSE grads, 34% is the breakdown for that same 16 to 18-year-old age category. So let's go ahead, move to the next slide. If you want to find this information, once again, you just go to Table 2, Gain Type, and you're going to select HSE. So that's going to give you both the age and race ethnicity breakdown. So that's an important point right there. If you want more information on how to find that beyond this slide, please contact me. Next slide. All right, and our takeaways from the age analysis. 16 to 18 age range is up slightly in enrollment, but our HSE graduates are definitely skewing younger. And that has implications for our programs and our testing centers on how you work with younger testers. More information on that to come. But reviewing individual program data for age comparison and HSE graduates is really key as we go through the rest of this program year and start next year, and understanding who not only is in your program, but who your graduates are. So a new function, and if you need any support, we are here at the state level. But I want to thank you guys for listening today. And now we are going to move on to Amy Raymer. She is going to join us with professional updates, or professional development updates.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Laura. Very good information. Next slide, please. I just have a few updates and a few PD opportunities and a few reminders for this morning. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, that summit is going on today. So if you have a chance after our statewide call, if you feel like getting on, and included the QR code. I've also sent this information out a couple of times in the last few weeks. So it is also in your email. Next slide, please. This opportunity, PD opportunity, also came out, I believe, last week with some combined training. It will be TABE combined with either essential education or different resources that adult ed programs use across the state. The particular QR code for this one is Essential Ed. Next slide, please. Same thing with Aztec or Paxson. If you're using those resources, there's a webinar directly related to TABE and that material. It's July 28th at 1 o'clock. These are all Eastern time. The registration in the email has it listed as Central, but since most of our state is on Eastern time, I put it in the slide as Eastern time. Next slide, please. And then there's also a TABE combined with pro-literacy resources. That's in August, also Eastern time at 1 o'clock. QR code for that if it's easier to register that way, or these 3 webinars are listed on the same email that came out last week. Next slide, please. Now a few congratulations going out to our programs. HEA, Horizon Education Alliance, received a National Book Fund grant for $4,100 to purchase new materials from Reader Press. Next slide, please. The following slides are all Dollar General grant recipients. The first one is Wagler Education and Training. They received $4,350 to purchase an interactive smart board, which they've now received and are currently using. So thank you, Michelle, for including a picture of your students with your announcement. Next slide, please. Learn More. They received $10,000, which is the maximum amount Dollar General grants for a total grant amount. 8,000 of that will be for teacher salaries, 1,000 will be for instructional materials, 500 for printing, which will include their outreach and follow-up, and 500 for professional development. So if you did not apply for a grant this year, please bear in mind that it comes up every February, and there are a multitude of ways that you can use Dollar General grant money. Next slide, please. NEO also received $10,000, the maximum grant amount, to offset their purchase of the subscription to Connectable. Next slide, please. CRC Brown received $7,000 to help build their literacy services in Brown County Jail. Next slide, please. Vigo County has received $10,000 to replace laptops that they purchased several years ago when they received a smaller Dollar General grant amount. This year they received the full amount to replace those laptops that they purchased several years ago. So you can receive the grant more than once. Next slide, please. Literacy Alliance also received $10,000, which they will use to supplement their teacher salaries. Next slide, please. Indy Reads received $8,000 to help supplement teacher wages, taxes, and benefits. Next slide, please. We had 3 programs receive funding to develop their English language classes. That's Benton, Fountain, Warren, which is the Warren County Learning Center, Owen County Public Library, and Peru, which is Miami County Adult Education. So congratulations to all of the programs that received National Book Fund grants, as well as Dollar General grants. Please keep these in mind for next year. If you did apply and you were not selected, or if you did not apply, I'm always willing to help with grant applications. So if you want to apply for these or any other grants, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help get the resources needed in order to get those applications submitted. Next slide, please. Just a couple last minute reminders. The professional development plan was released on May 16th. It has a due date of June 17th. If you have any questions as you're going through the plan and filling out for next year's goals, please let me know. I'm happy to help answer any questions. It's slightly modified over the version Dan and Nancy had been sending out the last few years. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Be sure to include those strategic activities that you plan for those goals in your plan, so that you can have sort of a beginning, the actions you're going to take, and how you plan to reach that goal. Next slide, please. And then if you have any questions related to the PDF final reflections, please also send any questions to me. I'd be happy to answer those as well. So thank you very much, and that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate you providing those updates, and great job on getting those extra grant dollars for our programs. Now Megan is here, our HSE coordinator, and she has some great information to share with you all today. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Megan.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Great information, Amy, on all that. Just kind of little reminders that I would just like to mention briefly for HiSET and Diploma Sender. If you have any questions or concerns for Diploma Sender, if you're not getting your documents sent out to you, please contact me first, and I'll reach out to Diploma Sender on your behalf. For HiSET, if you are having any kind of difficulties or you're needing some extra guidance, please, when you contact them, please make sure that the state is copied on those emails. It's easier for us to know when you're having a situation. We can actually hopefully make the solution a lot faster for you, and we can dive deeper into it. Because if you are having a problem somewhere, probably somewhere else in the state is also having the exact same problem. So please keep the state in the loop. Next slide, please. Okay, the reminders for the 30-day waiver. When you are submitting a waiver, please ensure that you do have the appropriate documentation that is listed on the waiver. The student must have the entire battery completed prior to the waiver, and students also need to be attending class remediation. This is huge because when they only have 3 opportunities in a calendar year to pass the test, if they're not coming to class remediation, we really do not want to waste an opportunity for a failure. We want them to be able to pass. If you have any questions, contact the state team and we'll be able to help you with this information. Next slide, please. Okay, HiSET does not do anything for, they only do calendar year for 2021 from January 2000 to December 2021. So their data has not out yet for the year 2021. So all the data that I have is for year 2020. But please keep in mind when I go over the HiSET data that I'm intertwining it with program and with HiSET. States go by program year. So in the program year of 2019, California had 12,377 testers. In program year 2020, they decreased 16.34%. So they had 10,035 testers. Florida had 4,318 testers. Indiana and Florida was also number 2 in the country on the NRS report for 2019. And in Indiana, also in 2019, we were ranked as number 3 in the country, according to the NRS report. So we had 4,146. So we increased 14.42%. And program year 2020 was 4,744. And in Florida, increase of 4.33, but they only had 4,505 testers. North Carolina in 2019 was ranked 4th with 32,635 testers. And in program year 2020, they decreased of a 24.21% to the 1,997 testers. So they dropped from being number 4 in the country to number 6 for program year 2020. So in 2020, South Carolina is actually now number 4 in the country with 2,112 testers with a decrease of 0.84%. South Carolina was not in the top 5 for program year in 2019, and they had 2,130 testers. Tennessee remained the same as in top 5 according to the NRS report for program year 2019 and 2020. In program year 2019, Tennessee had 2,316, and in Tennessee in program year 2020 had 2,090 with a decrease in 9.76%. So now I'm going to actually break it down to per subtest or subject. Next slide, please. So for reading for calendar year 2020, California had 5,761 testers. They had a pass rate of a 9.56 on reading, or excuse me, an increase of 9.56 from calendar year of 2019. So their pass rate was a 67.6%. So please remember that when we're talking about NRS versus HiSET goes by calendar year. It was just January 1st to December 31st, and program year is from July 1st to June 30th. And in Florida, they do the GED, and then Indiana had TASK, and then South Carolina also did GED and task testing, and then Tennessee in 2020. They had 3,723. Their pass rate for reading was a 71.2, which is an increase of 6.11 from calendar year of 2019. North Carolina, their testers was 2,404. Pass rate was a 64.1, an increase of 12.64%. So even though the testers have decreased from calendar year or program year from 2019 to 2020, we still have very high our pass rates have increased. So it was always about the quality, not necessarily the quantity. Next slide, please. Okay, for writing for calendar year 2020, California had 4,264 testers. They had a pass rate of 80.4%, which was an increase of 8.94 from previous year of 2019. They had 13,420 testers for writing. Florida they have the GED, so according to the NRS report, they were number 2 for 2019. Indiana did task. North Carolina for program year 2019, they had 4,678, and for program year 2019, and then for 2020 they had 1,880, and they had an increase of a pass rate of 1.994%. Tennessee, they had 3,282 for program year 2020, and they had a pass rate of 79.6%, which is also an increase from program year of 2019. Next slide, please. Here is the breakdown for math. So for math and program year, again, Indiana and Florida had switched. So in program year 2020, Indiana was ranked number 2. We had the task test in California. There was 4,706 testers, and they had a pass rate of 67.9%. They increased as a 0.15%. And then South Carolina did the GED. And in Tennessee, they had 3,547 testers, and then they have a pass rate of 71 with an increase of a 0.709%. And in North Carolina also dropped from being number 4 in the country to number 5, and their rate on this decreased as 0.97%. Next slide, please. Science. So again, please remember that HiSET does calendar year and NRS does the program year. So for calendar year of 2020, Indiana was ranked number 2 with task, and in Florida, who had is number 3 now. On Tennessee, they had a pass rate of an increase of a 5.68%, and North Carolina had a decrease of 2.6% from program year of 2019, and in South Carolina was not even ranked in the top 5 for program year of 2019. So even though even though the number of testers has went down, there's still been an increase except for North Carolina. Next slide, please. Social studies. The only one that had a decrease in this one as well was North Carolina. North Carolina decreased of a 1.53%. And in Tennessee testers, they had an increase of a 0.71%. And in California had an increase of a 1.18%. So for program year 2020, Indiana is ranked number 2. For whatever reason, my slides got mixed up a little bit, but that's okay. So that just gives you everybody an idea of where the top 5 stand for program year 2019 and program year 2020. Next slide, please. Okay, here is where our numbers stand currently. We've had, for the entire battery of, we had 4,188 testers. Our pass rate so far is a 74.81% pass rate. Our reading is a 5,040 testers with a 73.89%. Writing, we've had 4,851 testers. Our pass rate is a 77.95%. Math is a 4,946 testers with a 75.11 pass rate. Science is 4,699 testers with a 87.42% pass rate. In social studies is a 4,835 testers and a 83.85% pass rate. So we're right now at 1,685 HSE testers than last year for year 2020. So that gives everybody an idea of where we stand on each subtest. So science and studies are still our highest pass rate, and writing is the third highest, but math and reading are the ones that everybody seems to be struggling a little bit with. So that is all the data I have for you. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Megan. That's really interesting. Denise provided lots of great information on reading, which is currently now our lowest pass rate. So thank you for sharing all that. It ties together well. Great job, Megan. And now Roy is here with IET and WEI updates. So I'll turn it over to you, Roy.
Thank you. Good morning, Hoosiers. Today I will cover checking your data, guidance for the newer measurable skill gains, and application materials. Next slide, please. Last week, we sent out the IET, WI, and IELCE monthly reports. Using the IET monthly report, you should see all of your IET and IET WI courses listed. Please verify that all of your courses are present. The column session name correlates to the course name. Each program should go into each course and enters and update each student's information. You need to indicate if the student dropped the course or completed it. If the student completed the course, you need to indicate if they got the certification or not. I recommend updating all of your IET course data first because it will automatically update any IET WI or IELCE IET combination courses. Once you update the information, you can verify by running the IET monthly report under Local in the Reports tab and enters. Next slide, please. Use the WEI and IELCE monthly reports to check your enrollments in those respective classes. Check that all your WEI and IELCE courses are present and update whether students have completed or dropped the course. For your WEIs and IELCEs that also include an IET certification, you should see the certifications present as well. If one of your courses is missing from the WEI report, verify that you have students with enough hours to be enrolled. You will have to update each student's attendance. If you are still missing the course after updating attendance and verifying enrollment, please contact me. Next slide, please. If you have WEI where you are missing one of the newer, if you have a WEI where you are using one of the newer measurable skill gains, skills progression, or progress milestone, you will have to run your table 4 by courses. Then check column G, number of IET or workplace literacy participants who achieved an MSG other than EFL gain or secondary. To update this column, you will simply need to enter the date each student achieved the skills progression or measure or progress milestone. You go to the same in-train/post-secondary screen and right-click and edit the respective course for each student. Be sure to have the needed documentation in the student's file. Next slide, please. All right, now we have some updates to the skills progression measurable skill gain. This is the one that is basically an assessment or a successful passage of an exam that is required for a particular occupation. More guidance from Octave states that this MSG can only be used in the context of an IET. It states the skills progression is not an appropriate type of gain to use to determine MSG for an adult education participants who are not enrolled in an IET program. Next slide, please. NRS guidance states the skills progression MSG measures demonstrated occupational progress, and it is only appropriate for IET students. IETs are the only service under AEFLA that allows for occupational training. They go on to say the exam can be an employer-required, knowledge-based exam, or other tests necessary to obtain a credential, the keyword being credential. So moving forward, the skills progression will only be counted for IATs and will automatically be counted in enters for your IAT or IAT combination courses when a student gets the certification. You will not need to do anything extra. You will apply for your IAT or IAT combination course as you have always done by filling out the application and submitting an IAT curriculum. Once your student gets the certification, you will update their record and enters, and the skill progression MSG will automatically be counted in enters for you. Next slide, please. The application will be slightly modified, and most of the updates have already been updated on the website. I will really be strict on the naming convention next program year. It will be the same as it has been. Include the type of course, the certification, and the program year. I will include this on the application as a reminder. I will also be sending out updated MSG guidance that contains the guidance from Octane and NRS. All of this will be updated on the state website, and that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. Lots of great information. And now we are moving on to Matt Kreitz and Shruti to give us an enters update.
Well, good morning, Laura. Thank you very much. Welcome in, everybody. You're gonna hate me. I'm gonna be the bad guy today because I'm looking at enters right now, and there are way too many people who do not have Table 7 done. This is required. It's got to be done by the end of the year, and there are just a lot of programs that still don't have Table 7 done. I also ran an audit the other day and saw that there's still a lot of age parsig errors. So we need to get those cleaned up. I have fixed all of the dupe enrolls for the state, I believe. So those should be gone. Please try not to create any more dupe enrolls. So speaking of the closeout year and the new year's getting ready to start, I'm going to cover the process in which you roll over stuff, and this will tie in with what Roy was talking about with the IETs and courses and things. You as a program can do two things. You can roll all of your courses over into the new year. So it will add the course and students into the new term, or you can create brand new courses in the new year and enroll your students and put them in manually. If you go with option number one, you will go to the course, you will right click on it, roll to new term, and then it will pop up a window that will say, what date do you want for the last attendance date? What that means is if you go back to, let's say, June 1st as an example, any student that has attendance from June 1st till the day that you do that will be included into the new course. You'll still have to go in on every single one of those students and do their demographics. That has to be done every single year, regardless of if you roll them over, if they're continuing, if they're brand new. All students have to get new demographics and goals at the start of a new term on July 1. So testing for those students that you roll over that are going to continue. If they have a valid TABE test 90 days prior to July 1, okay, 90 days prior to July 1, if you test them at 40 hours, once they reach their hours in the new term, it will look back at that test within 90 days of July 1 as the pretest, and you don't have to pretest the students on July 1 or the start of the new term. As a program, though, you have the option to re-pretest every single student at the start of every program year. So that's up to you. Any students that you roll into the new term, regardless of if they show up or not, will not be removed, because those are students that you're thinking are potential contacts, and they will be counted for Table 2A. So keep that in mind. Don't go way back to the middle of the year to pull students in. Every year people have said, hey, can you delete these students? I didn't mean to roll that many forward, or they didn't show back up even though we thought they would. They're going to count on table 2A. They will be in your course. They'll get exited after 90 days and you'll be fine. So if you're going to do the whole new course thing, it's just like starting any other program year. You're going to create a course, assign the teacher, and then add the students to it after you do intakes on your new students, or go to the old student record and then enroll them into the new course. With the IETs and the WEIs, we've already had a couple of questions about this. You can roll those courses over. They can be the exact same courses as long as on your brand new application, that naming stuff that he was talking about matches, or you may have to modify the name and course code in inters once you roll them over into the new term so that it matches what Roy wants for names and stuff like that. And it has to still be on the brand new application. So you can still take those students. If you've got a class running right now and it's not done and it's going to continue on into July, then roll those courses over, rename them, change the course code or the name, but ensure that on the new application, it matches so that he can mark that it's the new IET WEI. Just had a question. I'm going to follow up on this for the HSEs counting, okay? If a student is enrolled right now and they have not passed their HSE, because federal guidance says they must earn it within the term that they are enrolled in, or it will not count, and you know that they're going to get it in July or even August, put that student into the new term, ensure that they come back for at least 1 hour, if not more, to keep remediating them. And then you will get the credit for that HSE in next year, not this year. It has to be in the term that they are enrolled in. So if they're still enrolled and you put them into the new year in 22-23, yep, that's right, 22-23, and give them an hour in a course or more, and the moment they earn their HSE, that will count as the post-test for any TABE test that they've taken within 90 days. If they do not have a valid TABE test within 90 days of July 1, you may want to pre-test them in July to ensure that they're going to count on Table 4 correctly. So if you have any questions about that, if you have any questions about your errors, we're going to be sending a list out after the call of those programs that have those age par sig errors, and that's the ones I'm really concerned about, is the age par sig, because you have to have all that documentation on file. We do know of a select group of students from the Afghan intake that we're already aware of, but all of that should be taken care of. Please ensure that you get your errors done by June 30th, and then we report to the feds and your data will get locked in, and there'll be more information coming up on that, but ensure that your errors are clean. That's all I have.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. We'll get to questions here in a moment, but first we are going to hear from Jennifer Wigginton from IAACE. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hey, how you doing? It's like it took a second for the photo prompter or the, oh my gosh, am I going to be caught on my words already? Hi, everybody. Next slide, please. Upcoming membership benefit for IAACE members. We will be adding the JMath, or as you might know it, or the A2Z HSE math website. It was added, it was officially added, or the MOU was officially signed this month, and we will be adding that for all members in July. Next up, also as an IAACE member, you have access to the virtual.IAACE.com platform. If you do not have access, I'll encourage you to visit IAACE.com/platform-access. That's IAACE.com-platform-access to gain access to all the professional development offerings that are on your screen, as well as more to come. That includes that National Education Diploma that we just did last month, and all the tech talks. So visit that webpage, IAACE.com/platform-access to gain your access. That also has all of your past conferences, professional development, all of that's out there, as well as some new offerings. So please check it out. Next slide, please. IAACE award nominations are going to open this month. Did you know that the awards were established in 1973? Yeah, this seems like a long time ago. IAACE will be celebrating 40 years next year. I think it's a great time for you to consider who to nominate for the IAACE awards. There was a great article in the newsletter last month that explained all the awards and how all the descriptions are out there. So if you want to take a look at that, it's IAACE.com and look for the newsletter link. Remember, the event is going to be held in the evening at the conference on Thursday evening, and you should think a red carpet style. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? Next slide, please. Good news, the call for proposals has been extended. We are just a few proposals short to achieving our goal of 7 sessions offered per strand. I just want to do a shout out to the ELL strand. They are on it. There are plenty of sessions for us to choose from and make sure that we offer 7 strands in that. So great job to those strand leads that did that. If you are interested in doing a proposal, reach out to your strand lead or me if you have more questions. There are a couple of blogs on proposals, and also there was an article in the last newsletter offering some great advice on doing a proposal as well. So I encourage you to submit your proposal today. Next up, the student leadership track has arrived, and it is for all your advocacy needs and your marketing needs. Did you know that 12 states nationwide have experienced state funding increases, but Indiana has been flatlined for a decade? 2023 is the long session where we need to restore and elevate our funding. Our goal is to elevate by 15%, and 2023 can be our year with your commitment. We need 100% participation. That's 1 staff leader and 1 student leader to sign up by July 1st of this year. The committee is seeking programs to be a bigger part. Also, travel sponsors to get students to Florence is just one way you could be involved. On a bigger scale, I want you to think to pick a staff leader, pick a student leader, and submit them to the student leadership track to reserve your spot by July 1st. The advocacy component, the marketing component that this has for your program is going to be big in 2023. So I suggest you get on that today. And if you have any questions, please just reach out to me. It is a next up, advocacy is a year-round thing. You really should think of it as marketing your program and adult education as a whole. And it is time to start getting your plan together for AEFL week, which is the week before conference. Great week to lead up to conference, don't you think? So this is a great time to start checking the internet for ways a person may search to get help in regards to education. Have you heard of gethelp.com? That's gethelp, all smashed together.com. It's a great place that you might want to claim your free listing. Yes, there's a free listing option, and at least it gets your program out there of where they could get help for the educational needs. There's also findhelp.org. It is another free listing that you can offer or that you can claim, and bare minimum address and a contact number, website for them to find more information. It is also time to get your National Literacy Directory listing updated and make sure that it has all the additional information on it that you need, and make sure that it's actually correct. I was out there not too long ago, and I noticed that there were some programs that were just missing information entirely when I was doing a little background check for us. And then IAACE's, we are on the National Literacy Directory, and we were getting, we have it out there for volunteers, but I had one box checked incorrectly, so we were getting inquiries for students. So it's very good time to go out and check your National Literacy Directory, make sure you have all the correct boxes checked, and make sure that they can find you whenever they're utilizing that website. And last but not least, think of IAACE as your marketing partner. We can help you market your program in our next newsletter or on a blog. So if you've had a graduation event, a legislation event, any success stories, there is our website, especially for success stories on the website, IAACE.com/success stories. Perhaps you had an appreciation event. I want to know about it. I want to put it in the newsletter, and your fellow IAACE members and adult education providers across the state want to know what you're doing too. So share it with me at director@IAACE.com or give me a call. And that's all I got, Laura.
Great, thanks, Jen. Appreciate you being here. Lots of great things coming up with IAACE. So we are at the end. Matt, do you want to jump back on and see if we have any questions before we wrap up today?
Why, yes, we do. And you will be able to answer this because I could not.
Matt? Oh, there you go.
Wow. Just yell at me like that. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't give me the look. Okay. Was the ABE funding based on 100% performance? Christine Moore did not catch all of that. How was the funding doled out?
Well, Jerry had to step away, so we are going to talk through that real quick based on my limited knowledge, and I will defer to him for additional information. But the 80% base funding was based on previous year, the amount you received in your total grant amount. The remaining 20% was 75% of that remaining 25 was based on ABE performance only. And then 25% of that was IET WEI. So it's kind of the subset of the 20% broken out between ABE and IET. And if you would like more breakdowns on that, like I said, I would contact Jerry, and I'm sure he could walk you through it.
That is the only question. I took care of all the rest of them. So, anybody else got any questions before we go? If not, we will see you July 13th, 2022.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you then.